Interesting developments around the world, to say the least. To give you a brief overview of some of the stories breaking, Israel and Syria brace for regional war between mid-December and January of 2012. Barack versus the United States. Barack says we can't wait until Iran declares it has a nuclear bomb. Of course, Ehud Barak is the Secretary of Defense for the nation of Israel. And then a Vatican cardinal is saying that Jerusalem holy sites need special status under a global authority. That's interesting. If you follow this program, you know that's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. And then Canada is looking to save $6.7 billion by getting out of the Kyoto Treaty. They are soon going to have to pay for air. They're going to have to soon buy carbon credits. But if they simply opt out of the Kyoto Pact, all of that goes away. And then in the Egyptian elections, preliminary results are saying that the Muslim Brotherhood is winning over 40% of the vote. Salafist, another very strong Islamic group, is winning over 20% of the vote. So that's going to leave Islam with a very, very strong control of the Egyptian government. The Salafists in particular claim they would like to implement Sharia law, and most people believe the Muslim Brotherhood would as well. So those are some of the stories that are breaking today, and we will not have time to go into all of them in depth. Nevertheless, we do want to start with our main story right out of the gate, because this huge story, we would absolutely be negligent if we did not bring it to you. Israel and Syria brace for a regional war between mid-December 2011 and mid-January 2012. Now, this is December the 5th today, so when we talk about mid-December, you're talking about around 10 days or so from right now. So we're talking about a very serious news article. Let me just share some of it with you. The actions and words of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Syrian ruler Bashar Assad in the last 72 hours indicate they are poised for a regional war, including an attack on Iran for sometime between December 2011 and January 2012. Now, in their different ways, both leaders have posted road signs to the fast approaching conflict, Middle East sources disclose. Here are some of the signposts that this particular reporter believes are indicative that there is a war approaching. On December the 3rd, Saturday, Syria staged a large-scale military exercise in the eastern town of Palmyra. I've been to Palmyra, by the way. It's the original home of Baal worship. Some of the altars where they did human sacrifices hundreds of years ago, perhaps thousands of years ago, still stand in Palmyra. A creepy experience, to say the least. Nevertheless, Syria staged a large-scale military exercise in the eastern town of Palmyra, which was interpreted by Western and Israeli pundits as notice to its neighbors, primarily Turkey and Israel, that the uprising against the Assad regime had not fractured its sophisticated missile capabilities. So even while Syria is suffering from internal conflict, Syria apparently wanted to send the message we're as strong militarily as we have ever been. Israel made its rejoinder to the Syrian war message 24 hours later, addressing a ceremony honoring the memory of Israel's founding father, David Ben-Gurion. Netanyahu recalled how 63 years ago, Ben-Gurion declared the foundation of the state of Israel in defiance of pressures from most of Western leaders and a majority of his own party. They warned him that he would trigger a combined Arab attack to destroy the fledgling state just 3 years after the end of World War II. But fortunately for us, said Prime Minister Netanyahu. Ben-Gurion stood up to the pressure and went through with his decision. Otherwise, Israel would not be here today. There are times, said Netanyahu, when a decision may carry a heavy price, but the price for not deciding would be heavier. I want to believe, he said, we will always have the courage and resolve for the right decisions to safeguard our future and security. Although Netanyahu did not mention Iran, it was not hard to infer that the prime minister was referring to a decision to exercise Israel's military option against Iran's nuclear program in the face of crushing pressure from Washington and insistent advice of certain Israeli security veterans. Defense Minister Ehud Barak, who was standing behind the prime minister's shoulder, was as tense as a coiled spring, at least according to the reporter. 6 hours later, Netanyahu dropped a bombshell on the domestic political scene. He announced his Likud party would hold elections, including primaries, before January 31 of 2012, 2 years before schedule and a year before Israel's next general election. As head of one of the most stable and long-lived coalition governments ever to have ruled Israel, he is under no pressure, domestic need of a demonstration of leadership at this time. In the last 2 weeks, the Netanyahu government has been subjected to acerbic criticism on the part of one Obama administration office after another. They have presented Israel as having fallen into the hands of right-wing extremists who are engaged in a mad race to suppress the judiciary and diminish the civil rights of women and children, not to mention Palestinians. Now, this is the perception in Israel at this particular time, and that is that this right-wing government, as they like to call it, even though Netanyahu certainly I don't think can be considered right-wing, but they like to paint it in that direction. And they use for an example that there are very right-wing religious factions who want to, in the religious part of Jerusalem, segregate the buses so that women ride on one bus, men ride on another bus. Also, there's been a move recently in the military that certain soldiers say they do not want to attend any functions where women sing. They feel like they need to keep themselves away from this type of influence because it might stir feelings of attraction toward women that would be unholy, apparently. So this small splinter minority is being cited by such people as our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, to say that Netanyahu's government is moving toward the extreme right wing. The truth of the matter is, Netanyahu has already said that he is willing to divide the nation of Israel. He is willing to live side by side with a Palestinian state, and there are even indications that he is willing to share Jerusalem, believe it or not. Now, that's not a done deal yet. Nevertheless, it does appear that Netanyahu is willing to take some very liberal exercises in order to finally get peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So you can see here that there are many things that are indicating what is happening here. Going on, the unusual powerful U.S. and Russian naval buildups in the waters around Syria and Iran, Washington sought in late November to give the impression that the George H.W. Bush carrier strike group was anchored off of Marseille when it was spotted in the eastern Mediterranean opposite Syria. So all of a sudden, this very powerful strike group was stationed off the coast of Syria. Moscow then rushed to Syria's defense by airlifting. Now notice that, airlifting 72 anti-ship Yakhant missiles. to Damascus, these water-skimming weapons can hit naval targets at a distance of 300 kilometers. Now, if you know anything about Middle Eastern geography, you know that if you have these missiles on the shores of Syria, that they're going to hit anything nearby, which would, of course, include U.S. ships. So when you have U.S. ships under threat of Russian missiles, you certainly have the makings of a very volatile situation. Finally, neither the United States nor Russia would have concentrated two powerful fleets in the proximity of Syria and Iran unless they were certain a military conflagration was imminent. Now, what we're talking about here is Russia then rushed her only aircraft carrier to Syria, and then we moved a major force off the coast of Iran down near the Straits of Hormuz. So here we have the reason why this reporter believes that war is imminent. Now, the next article goes on to reiterate some of these things from an additional angle. Barak says, we can't wait until Iran declares it has a nuclear bomb. Barak is simply saying, if we wait until Iran says we have a nuclear bomb, it's too late for us. We now have committed 21st century suicide. And so he's saying maybe the United States can afford to do that since they're halfway around the world, but we are not in that position. We simply cannot wait. Well, with the reports coming in recently from the International Atomic Energy Agency stating that Iran has been working secretly for a long time on producing nuclear weaponry. This report just came out last month. Well, with that report coming out and with estimates saying that Iran will have nuclear weapons, some say by as early as April, others say within 12 months. Barak himself, the defense minister of Israel, said that within 12 months, Iran would be unstoppable. So he very clearly sent a message when he was being interviewed on the Charlie Rose show here in the United States of America 3 or 4 weeks ago. Charlie asked him, well, do you have the ability to be successful to go in and take out the nuclear potential of Iran? And Mr. Barak said, I choose not to answer that question, which sort of telegraphed to me that he knows they can do it. So, serious times, and it all lines up with the prophecies of the Bible, by the way. We'll take your calls in the next segment of the program. We'll be right back.